Hi friend, it's been a while. How are you? You look incredible. It's good to be back. And also, it is Diwali outside. So, if you hear fireworks, I am sorry. There is literally nothing I can do about it. In case you've been out of the loop, about a month ago, my sweet dog Summer passed away suddenly and traumatically. You've probably seen him in previous videos and also my literal logo. And ever since, I have been massively creatively blocked. Don't get me wrong, I have been painting, but it's been all studies. And that's okay. We work with what we have right now, and hopefully if we do enough studies, it'll get the old creative brain working again. However, while I was on break, I was consuming a lot of art content, and I came across this video by the incredible Emily Hughes. She is an amazing traditional artist, you guys. In case you haven't seen her work before, I highly recommend her channel. But she is one of many artists who have attempted the 100 Heads Challenge. And while previously I haven't had the patience to attempt this challenge, I feel like this part of my journey is forcing me to try it out. I don't know how this video is going to turn out, but I thought today we could talk about it all while we paint a bunch of faces. Now, I'm usually okay talking about deep emotions and working through fears. However, I'm not very good at talking about my own deep emotions and fears. But today I am feeling called to really work through some of that grief and just talk to you about everything that's been going on. And hopefully this video helps me process it a lot better and also helps some of you guys who might be dealing with grief feel a little more seen and heard. We won't get too dark or depressing today, I promise. But I highly encourage you guys to whip out some of your own art and maybe paint along as we just hang out and chat for a bit. We won't make a significant dent on the 100 heads today, obviously. This is going to be a very long challenge, but I thought it would be just fun to spend some time together and enjoy a bit of cozy time lemonade. We'll talk about art, we'll talk about how it might help us process some tough times. So if all of that is sounding good to you, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Maybe comment below if you've attempted the 100 Heads Challenge or if you plan to in the future. And of course you can come say hello on social media. All of my links are in the video description below. If you guys enjoyed this more chilled out, non-tutorial-y but more hangouty type video, I would be more than happy to do more of these, so just comment below and let me know. But yeah, without much further ado, let's go, man. Let's get into the 100 Heads Challenge. Alrighty, so fun fact, the first video by Emily that I watched was actually this one. And then I got recommended the 100 Heads video, but in this one, she made a super important point about choosing the right reference. She said something about how while most portrait photography uses very diffuse beauty lighting that makes the subject look super aesthetically pleasing, these bright, diffuse photos don't really make for very good portrait paintings because you're not learning how to paint eye-catching drama. And you guys know I like to go into any tutorial or challenge with a clear intention because that's the best way to get the most out of a learning experience. So when the 100 Heads video popped up, I thought, hey, I'm always trying to paint drama a lot better, and I always feel like the skin tones I paint tend to turn out a little lifeless. What if we use this challenge to really drill these two skills and learn to paint dramatically lit and vibrant portraits instead? So then I scoured Pinterest for some of the most dramatically lit photo references, and while we don't quite have all 100 yet, I think there's plenty to choose from so far. For today's video, I thought we could work on these three to begin with. They're all very differently lit and colored, but each one feels super alive and can teach us a lot. So let's start with this moody picture. I'm going to work on the same square canvas for all 3 portraits today, just 4K by 4K pixels, because we're not too fussed about dynamic composition or anything. Like I said, the intention is to drill drama and color into my muscle memory and visual library, so that hopefully by the time we get to head number 100, painting vibrant, dramatic portraits becomes an instinct. I started with a super rough sketch and pretty much just used a chalk brush and an airbrush for the portrait. I'm not too worried about getting a perfect likeness today, but we are going to try our very best to at least capture an impression of the character. See, the great thing about doing one-to-one portrait studies is that a lot of the design choices have been made for you. That's not to say that you don't have to make artistic choices, but it feels like a little less pressure when you already have a really good starting point, as opposed to when you make a completely original composition from scratch with no idea of what your end goal is. I find that photo studies help me work through complex emotions a lot better than creating original art, because it lets my eyes and hands do most of the work while my feeling brain gets to process in the background, and process it has for like an entire month. Like, I'm gonna be honest, grief is not something I've ever felt before, not remotely to this extent. I've had loss before, and a lot of it, but I've come to learn that loss and grief are 2 very separate things, at least in my own experience. Loss feels like the immediate, short-term physical departure. Loss was the day I saw him lying on that vet's table, wrapped in a blanket that would do nothing to warm him up, because he was so cold by the time we even got there. Loss to me was the knee-jerk reaction. It was the crying while I watched him be buried in that blanket, and the shock when I got home after and the house felt cold and empty. Loss was that cup of coffee I made on autopilot when I got home and how it tasted of nothing. Grief, however, feels slow. After the initial shock wore off, grief felt like a giant anvil on my ribcage. It didn't come the next day or the day after that or even for the rest of the week. It actually hit me at the most random moment. Summer used to love sitting by the couch. He loved having a piece of furniture to rest his back against. And because he was little and quiet, you often had no idea he was even there. And then, like a week after he was gone, I was about to go sit on the couch and I caught myself checking to make sure I didn't step on his little paws or tail. That right there, that is when I felt it switch from loss to grief, because it finally went from the shock of loss to the deep, permanent state of grief. It went from feeling like something was amiss to finally realizing that something would forever be missed. And in a weird, twisted way, that actually felt like a little bit of a relief, because my mind went from the confused, turbulent state of not knowing what was happening to the more settled state of, okay, this change is here to stay. It's not pleasant, but now the dust has settled and we can begin to consider what life will be like from this point forward. I feel like this particular portrait really helped me put a clear distinction on the 2 feelings, because the overall mood is dark and deeply emotional, but it kind of feels like that teal flat background signifies the shock of loss. It is jarring and monotonous at the same time, kind of like if you were walking down the street and suddenly hit a giant flat wall that came out of nowhere. The model, however, feels like grief. There's dimension there, there's light and dark, there's warmth and cold, there's the numbness of her expression coupled with the vibrance of the colors. It is significantly more complex and deep. Towards the end though, I felt a little spark of inspiration strike, just the tiniest little hint of it that made me want to add a few smaller detail elements into the background. I threw in some texture around the edges of that teal to kind of further illustrate the jagged nature of shock. And of course we needed some floating specks because hi, I am Srish. Here's the finished painting, and it definitely felt like a good warm-up to set off the challenge. kind of funny to look back and see how our emotional state affects every artistic choice we make, down even to the references that we choose. When I first came across this photo, I was immediately drawn to the bright sunshine and how it really highlighted all the character in this man's face. All those lines and creases in his skin, the hollow of the cheek and the jaw, the white in his mustache, all of it talks of a long, eventful life and a face that has expressed a whole variety of emotion. However, what really struck me is how, despite the clear blue sky and the extremely bright sunshine, there was still a darkness to this character. Like there's a shadow over his head from that hat and a grimace in his expression. It is such a complex narrative that seems so simple on the surface, I knew I had to attempt it. You see, a huge and incredibly unexpected part of the grieving process for me was this strange sense of envy I felt for the people whose lives were exactly the same, completely unaffected by what felt like such a big dramatic shift in my universe. It was like everyone around us could wake up and feel the sun, go about their regular days as usual, while the three of us in this house would never be able to feel that way again. Sammy was such a cornerstone in our lives, and we never even realized just how deeply intertwined he had become to the very foundation of who we were as a family. And then when he was suddenly gone, it was like our entire dynamic was uprooted. He was in our lives for 10 whole years, and while it feels like the time flew by in the blink of an eye, it is only now that each of us has realized just how deeply he changed us. Looking back, I know I'm not even remotely the same person I was before he came into our lives. I was literally 19, this was before university. He was one of my 2 friends in the entire world at that time. Like, it's immeasurable the ways in which he brought light and laughter into our lives. And then, out of nowhere, he was gone. But now we can't just go back to who we were before him, because we're just not even the same people. He's the laughter lines and the hollow cheekbones and the forehead wrinkles that stand out so proudly in the sun. And now it feels like he is also the darkness around the edges. Everyone grieves differently. Some people grieve loudly, like the pain is too big and too intense to keep inside. It can't be contained by a mere human body. Others grieve quietly, like the hurt is too deep in a cavern in your soul that's too far down to be able to pull out and release it. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm the second type, and this image really spoke to me as a quiet griever, because it is that feeling of a silent hurt in the sunshine. You can tell the pain is there, the memories that will never go away, and yet the world keeps turning. The sun rises and sets, nothing has changed. But then again, everything has changed. I like how this portrait turned out in terms of value, but looking back, it could definitely use a little more contrast, saturation, and texture. I was trying not to spend ages on each portrait, focusing instead on getting the overall impression down as opposed to every little detail. It's not bad, but I definitely think I could have done better. Our third and final painting for today is easily the most dramatic of the lot, because not only do we have an extreme contrast in light and dark values, not only do we have an extreme contrast of warm and cool hues, we also have an extreme contrast with saturated and desaturated tones. This, to me, feels like late afternoon on a warm summer's day where the sun is low but not quite a golden hour yet. So we still have warm light and cool shadows, but everything is getting super dramatic and saturated. This was definitely the most challenging head of the lot because it is all about balance and moderation. And if you've watched any of my old videos, you know that balance and moderation is my personal Achilles heel, especially lately when my mental state has been all over the place and mood swings have become the new normal. For all three of these paintings, I started by establishing the shadow tone, then the highlights and midtones. And of all three pieces, this was the one where I found it hardest to work like that, because although at first glance the shadows in the skin seem cooler toned, the actual hue is really warm. It's just that the midtones and highlights are even warmer and way more saturated, which then makes the deeper, slightly desaturated shadows look really cool toned. The other massive challenge I set myself for literally no apparent reason was to have as little detail and refinement in the sketch as humanly possible. Why would I do that? Literally why? It taught me absolutely nothing, and it made my life so much harder when it came to the placement of light and shadow, and it was especially bad while sectioning the hair. Don't do what I did, kids. Don't get lazy and rush through the sketch because you think your future self can figure it out when you put the actual colors down. The hair was definitely the hardest part because not only is it wavy and choppy, it is also quite frizzy. So it's kind of a texture that requires patience to build up, and I don't know, man, I feel like my patience has been in short supply of late. Am I allowed to blame that on the grief as well, or is that just a me thing? I definitely didn't quite nail the colors the first time I put the hair values down, but eventually with a lot of soft light blend mode, we got something that holds a bit of resemblance to the original. In terms of the emotion, this painting feels like where I am right now with everything. There is the bright, warm light that talks about joy and love on the horizon, but there is also the deep, cold shadow, the pain and loss. And that is pretty much a summary of my emotional state. It is just equal parts light and dark, and it swings from one side to the other pretty much arbitrarily. However, working on these three studies so far has definitely been a nice way to get back into the swing of things, because I've been able to engage with the artistic process, but without really having to come up with a crazy, powerful, original concept. I'm gonna do my best to stick with this challenge because it is actually really nice to relax for a bit and just focus all my conscious energy on trying to recreate what I see with my physical eyes, as opposed to trying to translate a concept that only exists in my mind's eye. Here's the final painting for today. Let me know what you think about all three of these. And after all of that, I don't know how I feel. But I do like the fact that this challenge so far has kind of pushed me to try improving on references a little more, which means we are well on our way to creating some original art again, which was the intent of this challenge. So great job, guys. We're getting there. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for still being here, for sticking around while I got my life and myself together again. I haven't posted in a month, and it is wild to me that not only did my sub count not go down, it actually went up, which is a little crazy. So thank you so much for being here and for supporting my work. I really appreciate it. And a super special thank you to my patrons who stuck with me through this all. I love you guys so much, and it is so good to be back. If you enjoyed this style of video where we just kind of chill out and hang out together and paint a bunch of faces, then let me know by giving this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more art content. Maybe leave me a comment below letting me know if you'd like to see more 100 heads challenge videos, if you've attempted the challenge yourself, and also what you've learned through the process. And of course, you can come say hello on Instagram, Discord, and Kara. Links to all of those are in the description below. Of course, if you like what I do and would like to support my work and grab exclusive content such as all of the speed paints from start to finish, my custom brush kit that I make from scratch, all of my art in 4K and 8K quality, and also prints of some of my art every few months. You can grab all of that on my Patreon. Your support on that allows me to keep making all this content. So I will leave a link up here in the cards and in the description below. And thank you guys so much for checking it out. Alrighty, this has been a long enough video, so thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you're looking for another video that was inspired by traditional art, you'll enjoy this one here where we looked at the magic of the underpainting and how it can really level up your digital art. So I'll leave that here in the outro. Make sure you check it out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!